Well, hello in our new setting here, Mr. Francois.
Look at this lovely little thing. Look at this lovely little thing. These lovely little stands.
Yeah, this is what you guys are looking at right now is about a $10,000 setup.
Actually, yeah.
Yeah, it's there. It's basically this was about 8,000 down here.
Yeah.
So, and this book as well, and this was the other 2,000. Everything else was free. We didn't grab it. So
We're using cell phones.
And speaking of that, we are here to shine a spotlight onto a movie that you and I both love, which is, of course, Clive Barker's masterpiece, Midnight Meat Train, on this episode of Spotlight. Okay, so... Midnight Meat Train. I think like one thing that's really interesting about Midnight Meat Train with you and I is that I think it's one of those movies that whenever you mention it and you tell somebody, oh, Midnight Meat Train, I actually really enjoy that. A lot of times you get the same kind of reactions like, yes, I also enjoy that movie. So it's a really interesting thing that the movie was released, didn't really have too much of a wide release. I actually went into a limited release because Lionsgate just lost all faith in it. Mm-hmm. They're like, no, we don't like this one. What we're going to do is cut it down to limited and then release it into discount theaters. Mm-hmm. And then they were shocked that the revenue wasn't there.
And it's interesting because I want to say that film came out on straight to video and then like limited release. It was like right before Bradley Cooper really fucking blew up.
Oh yeah.
And it's like because that movie was already delayed, wasn't it? Like they sat on it for quite a while.
It was around the time that Lionsgate had immense success with Saw. Like Saw is what made Lionsgate go into that darker way. They did Saw, then they had The Descent, and then after that, everything they did. So kind of like parallels with New Lines and how they were like pump out a Freddy movie and like, you know, New Lines is the house that Freddy built, right? And Saw is kind of like what turned Lionsgate in the early 2000s into like that kind of like where you would look for horror films. It's a little different now, but so Midnight Meat Train was one of those things where they're like, okay, well, Clive Barker's a big name in horror. Let's just kind of like grab some script. We'll get a no-name writer who's just going to write it. The guy had not written anything before. He went on to write movies like, oh God, what the hell did he even write? Like crap, basically. He had a story by credit on the new Grudge movie that came out like 2020 and some other shit I'll just dump here. Like just did crap movies. But what I really like is that even though they were like, okay, let's take this movie, let's grab this weird story and everything like that. The fact that they even gave it the time of day makes me love what Lionsgate was back then, where it was like anything to just kind of have a movie out. And I think that's why like this movie just kind of like really slid onto the tracks. You have Bradley Cooper, rising star. You have Leslie Bell or Bob or something like that. She plays the girlfriend. She was in like Iron Man movies, and then famously she was the daughter in Taken. So it was like everybody right before they kind of went big, but Lionsgate had no faith in it. And yeah, it was a little bit of a botch thing. They even got like a Japanese director, which I have his name here. I had to write it down because saying any of that shit. But this isn't going to help. Ryuhei Kitamurin? I don't know. But yeah, he's a pretty famous Japanese director. He got put in the cult scene for a movie called Versus, which is like a samurai kind of action movie that's really good, actually. If you haven't seen it, I recommend that. And then he also did this weird little horror movie called Alive. But I find it interesting that Lionsgate was like, let's grab him. And the only thing I think of why they would want him is, once again, just all marketing purposes. So it's like Clive Barker and then him, and the J horror scene was really big. So let's just get this Japanese director and he'll bring this kind of style to it. And then hilariously, when they saw the movie, they're like, we have no faith in this because this is not what we wanted. We wanted Saw or something way more gratuitously violent, but what they actually ended up getting was like this really nice psychological a thriller in a way that's like about the spiraling downfall of this main character. And I think that's why I like Midnight Meat Train so much, is it really isn't just like, it's not a slasher film. It is like more of a psychological like fall of a character into this dark, deep corner of life. And the Clive Barker stuff is always kind of like that, but I do really enjoy.
And honestly, it's like it's kind of a perfect role for Bradley Cooper, because like even it kind of reminds me of his role in Silver Linings Playbook, where like Silver Linings Playbook, obviously it's like he's much more mentally unwell, but it's like Bradley Cooper really got to eat some scenes, like, and then in Midnight Meat Train equally, like there's scenes when he really starts getting up and starts seeing some really up shit. That he also like fully gets to act and like gets to do some really weird, uncomfortable scenes.
She got abducted. This is the train she went in on. That's his hand. You know how I know it? Because I took another photograph earlier of him going down into the subway, the same subway. I totally got him. Look, that's him. This is the guy, It's been happening. There's been abductions. It's happened before. I don't know if it's a copycat, but it's him, and I got him.
It's one of those things where it's like, I feel like had they sat on the movie for like another year or two maybe, and then let like Bradley Cooper like start having that huge success that he had, they would have been like, man, let's put $1 million into marketing this thing and make so much cash, because like he would I feel like that movie could have been a huge hit had the stars just been like a year or two difference been aligned.
Oh yeah, I because like when The Hangover was like 2009, right? And this is 2007. I think. Oh, was it?
I think I literally think this movie was released, and then immediately Bradley Cooper became a huge star.
And that's the thing that blows my mind, because I think this movie was made for something like $7 million at the time, and usually marketing budgets match the budget of the movie. So if it's $7 million movie, $7 million marketing. To me though, what I find so baffling about it is like, to have no faith in it that you botched the release of it is so baffling to me, because I'm like, why not, instead for doing a $7 million budget for marketing, do like a 3.5 or a 2 million, because you can still get it into theaters. Maybe you're not going to release it to 3,000 theaters across North America, but you're going to release it to 1,000. That's good enough. And then put in the scenes, and then just make deals with like AMC theaters or Canada Cineplex for a 2-week thing. And then it's and then if you're really trying to like save costs on it, try to make it that the revenue is for the first week a 50-50 split, and then after that it's a 30-50 split, because that's always the negotiations. And I guarantee you, because it's a horror film, it would have made a ton of money.
Oh yeah.
Like I really do. All you had to do is put out one good fun trailer, like, you know, those early 2000s trailers that were like fast pad, Midnight Meat Train. Yeah, exactly. And that's what you expect. So it's like you have Saw movies coming out, and then it's like Lionsgate, Midnight Meat Train. The name alone would get people hooked into it. And then it might have actually pumped the reviews up a bit more, because it's not even like your cast isn't like, you have what's the actress that plays the like the art gallery lady in it, Brookie Shields. She was huge back in the 90s. And maybe a dying star, but still not completely dead. Enough to make people go like, oh, Brookie Shields is in this movie. Okay, sounds interesting. So very bizarre that the marketing of it is just like, no. I've never seen a movie lose so much faith in like a profitable genre before. It's very strange to me.
I'm trying to remember when I first heard about Midnight Meat Train. And I think it was one of those things where it was like, I was just starting my obsession with Clive Barker. So this probably would have been, I don't know, like, probably would have been in high school already, maybe like grade 10-ish. But it's like just starting to watch some of that stuff. Like it was right around the time that like Clive Barker's Jericho and like his video games they were trying to get him to become a known entity in video games. And it didn't quite, it almost happened, didn't quite happen. But it was right around that time, so you get interested in that stuff, especially if you're like a young budding horror fan, and you're looking at stuff, and then you see the poster for Midnight Meat Train, and I think I saw it online or something, and it is a
excellent poster,
fantastic poster. That's the thing; it looks like a poster from a horror movie that has like a several $1 million marketing campaign. It's almost like they paid some advertising studio a ton of money to get some initial stuff going, and then it was like, oh, cut the budget,
rip it all away.
Because it's weird how good a lot of the marketing material for the movie looks for a movie that never saw theaters. And then it's like, I saw that poster, whatever. I have no idea how I ended up watching the movie. Like I
rented it.
I feel like this was before, maybe I did too.
I rented
this is before
Yeah, this is
streaming
before
before like any like I don't
in
like
Canada. Netflix was around 2013. That's when
Mhm.
we started to in Canada actually have a library that would be enough for you to say, okay, rental stores should be worried now.
Mhm.
So like I remember just going into the video store and it was just right there in the horror section, and I was like, the hell is this? And that's how I found it, and I was like, what a wonderful film. I think like especially like with us being younger, when you watch the movie, like the first scene, there's so much blood,
Mhm.
and it's almost immediately you're like, oh, like maybe I shouldn't be watching this, you know, even if you're in high school. It's
At the
like,
time, it was probably like the most violent movie I'd seen.
it like I said with the Japanese director, it really took from that J horror. Like the blood is so excessive in this.
Mhm.
It's actually it's very funny because the movie is heavily stylistic. To be expected, but then like it contradicts, like it almost clashes with itself when you're trying to do the really intense like psychological downfall of a character. So it's like you're watching Bradley Cooper go through this like kind of like a head game like stalker kind of movie, and then like every time that Vinny kills somebody, the butcher, he kills somebody, it is like gratuitous violence. Like it is a extravaganza of blood and guts and insanity. And I kind of, you could say it's a sin, like, oh, it's a sin, it doesn't clash, but it just kind of like Twisted Metal, it's like something about it works for me. It's so entertaining.
I mean, honestly, if I think about what I desire in horror movies, especially these days, and if you're gonna show me a violent horror movie, it's gonna need to be pretty fucking violent.
It's got to
Like,
be brutal.
I don't. If you don't see anything in a movie that half the point is to be gratuitously violent, you don't see anything like that, it's really gonna lose points with me. And I think like with Midnight Meat Train, if you're gonna have drama, like with the Bradley Cooper thing you're talking about, his descent into madness, it's like if you're gonna take that as seriously as the movie does and you're gonna play it as straight as the movie does, if you don't show me some violence that actually makes me kind of uncomfortable, I'm like, it's like you need to take both. Seriously,
the reason why I think the reason why I just love that contrast between it, where it's like feels like grounded in reality to just like over the top silliness almost, is that to Bradley Cooper, this is a completely new world to him, and when like literally like, and when you end up seeing that gratuitous, excessive, just like gallons of blood everywhere, it's almost like how a child would overreact to something. So like in my mind, I'm like, it is kind of like watching it and saying like, oh my God, you should have seen it, like everything went so crazy and it was wild, and then you actually look at real life photos of it and you're like, okay, it wasn't as bad as they're saying. But I love that kind of like play and imagination, and that kind of like, let's go a little fantastical with it, because this movie is, you know, playing with fantasy elements. It's Clive Barker. It's always psychosexual and fantasy elements.
And it's like, it's interesting you bring that up, because I actually, now that I think about it, I think it really works in the film's favor, because like you just said, if you heard the account of somebody, let's say somebody got abducted with their friend and they watched their friend get murdered, if you heard their account of what happened,
it sounds
it would be horrific.
Yes.
And that is honestly how they
that's how they saw it. Yeah, that's
and
real.
So it's like if you're gonna get that across, and like I think the movie does this brilliantly. It's like Bradley Cooper is shaken by what he. Sees. And he's a guy who sees up shit all the time. Like he's
like a nightcrawler.
Yeah, he puts himself in those situations all the time. Like he's seen it all. He's that kind of a dude. And the fact that when he first sees what this butcher's been doing, he's like, oh, I'm so obsessed with this, but I don't, like, I'm so scared at the same time.
Yeah.
It makes you be like, yeah, man, this is Like,
Oh yeah.
you need to get out of here. Like,
Yeah, it's just like, why do you? I understand that you want to keep kind of like going for your career and everything,
Yeah.
but it's like this is you're pushing it so far. I guess like we kind of like dive into it, but let's just back up a little bit and just kind of explain what the movie is to anybody who hasn't seen this. So I'll kind of just start it. Basically, like how this movie goes off is we're introduced to Bradley Cooper's character Leon. No connection to Resident Evil. And what he is he's a night crawler. He's one of those guys that goes around, takes photos of like bad car accidents and shit like that and sells it to the news so that he can get a quick paycheck. But he really wants to be an artist. And basically what ends up happening is through connections that he has and his girlfriend going out of his way for him, he ends up getting a interview with this like prestigious lady who owns an art gallery. And she basically sees his work and says,
I want to see the face of the businessman when the filth touches him. The next time you find yourself at the heart of the city, stay put. Be brave. Keep shooting. Then come see me.
And that's what leads him into this psychological downfall of a character. Really, is like he's going out there, he starts filming people or taking pictures of people, gets like into a really kind of violent scenario with those guys, which I love that scene. I think that's such a wonderful setup to getting to the actual villain of the movie. It's like you have those three guys, they're following that Asian lady. His boldness of it is a little kind of like silly because it's just like, oh, there's a camera here, you know what I mean? Maybe back in 2007 times were different, but nowadays I'm guarantee you just get stabbed anyway. That guy would be like, whatever, I get 3 meals a day and I don't gotta worry about shit. Taxpayers are covering me now. I will gladly kill you for interfering. But I think that scene was just done so well, the way it's played out. The actor that he gets, and he ends up getting the shots of him. I love how he turns it into like a photo shoot a bit as he's coming up the stairs. He's like, yeah, like that. Come on. Yeah, it's just like disconnected from the reality of the danger that he's in. So
I actually wonder, like, maybe it didn't quite play as well as they wanted it to. Yeah. But like in you describing the scene, I wonder if the whole premise, like the point of the scene, was to show that like he's so familiar with these situations that he can tell when someone's a poser versus like an actual
like criminal.
And so then he's able to identify them as like, these are the type of punks who are going to run away the second a cop shows up, or the second like that kind of thing shows up. Like they're going to get away with as much as they can, but they have no real balls. And I wonder, like, it doesn't quite play out that way.
No.
But I wonder if maybe that was the point of the scene.
The thing they were like trying to go for.
Yeah.
It definitely is supposed to be a scene that sets up to it's kind of like an inciting incident where it sets up to like the Asian girl ends up getting killed by the butcher, of course. But yeah, I think it's just it's one of those things where you don't need to do that as a narrative, but they do it to make it more interesting. They do it for characterization. And I agree with you. I think it is to show like a familiarity. It's also to showcase like that he is taking her words very seriously. Like he's just like, I want this and I will just go and follow these guys into like, this area.
Now I think about it, it's a brilliant bit of foreshadowing, because like the whole point of the scene is he saved this girl, but then he didn't save the girl. He actually, now the fate is much worse now that he's intervened. Yeah. And so the whole point of the movie is the fact that you interjected yourself has made it so much worse for everybody else. And yeah, so it is kind of a brilliant microcosm of the whole story.
Yeah. And you could say you're looking into it more than maybe they intended. But as I've always said, I'm like, if it's kind of like David Lynch in a way. It's like, if you can see it, it does exist in its own way. So
I honestly think that it's like with talented, I don't know if this is a talented screenwriter, but it's like sometimes talented people do bad stuff. But I think when you understand screenwriting, or if you're a writer who's good, you will put stuff like that unknown. Like you might not even be conscious of the fact that you were setting stuff up like that, because you're just trying to do some characterization. You're trying to whatever. Yeah. And the thing is, it works so well, that scene, as a microcosm of the rest of the movie, that it's like, if the guy who wrote it wasn't aware of that fact, like. He's like,
he tapped into something.
Yeah, like he was very, that script, he was in the zone in that script big time.
I agree. And as I was saying, it's just like, I think it's a great scene that then leads to the death of that girl. One part of it that I find so funny is I'm gonna blame it on direction a little bit. And it's so the Asian girl, after he saves, she's just like, most people would have just run away, but you actually like intervened in everything, and it makes it seem like it was for a selfless reason, but it was
Mm-hmm.
all selfish. He wants this, right? But then she ends up, to add even like another layer of selfishness to it, she ends up kissing him on the lips, and his reaction to it doesn't come off as like, no, I have a girlfriend that I love. It's very like almost like it's like a flatterment to it, and like he enjoyed it. Like if she didn't die in the next scene, he may have actually gone further and talked to her. And I was like, what a fucking weird, kind of makes him feel a little bit scuzzier than he might actually have played out, because you get a wonderful scene with him and his girlfriend. They're in love, everything like that. You're like, oh, they'll get married. You know, she's basically a symbol of the light side of his dark descent. It's like she is for sure the sun, and then when she ends up going away, it's just pure darkness for him, even though he's trying to hold on to it slightly. Quickly about that scene as well is I don't know if you remember, but the way that it's filmed is very interesting. It's like she's sitting there, and it almost looks like what they did is they filmed it like a very long take. So they made like everybody react very slowly and then sped it up in post. Of course, with him hitting, there's going to be like a quick little cut in there, but it's like all of it feels like this kind of weird. It feels janky in a way, but it works. And once again, it's like more stylistic to me. It's like, I think janky is the wrong word. It just comes off very unnatural, which is it's supposed to be. This man is unnatural. And for it being your first kind of introduction to him, I mean, the beginning is an introduction, but that was actually a fake out because that's Bradley Cooper at the beginning. That's the twist of that. It's like for your first introduction to Vinny's character, to the butcher, I think like just the way that the eye to direct it that way was really interesting, because you could have just had it be like cut here, cut here, cut here, cut here, and turn into like this other pseudo action sequence. But it's just like this shot where he's like faded out in the background, and it's all focused on her, and she's looking out and she's smiling because she's like, wow, what an amazing moment in my life. And then just boom, smacks her right in the fucking head with this hammer. And I was just like, and then it just cuts. It just goes like, okay, next scene now. And I'm like, that blunt, like matter of fact of it, like, once again, feels very J-horror to me. I mean, J-horror like plays a lot in like realist kind of elements, but whenever they go into the formulist elements of filmmaking and they really embrace them, they go wild, like Tokyo Gore Police levels insanity. And this movie does feel like it has that kind of middle balance where you are getting something that feels a little more real, and then every single time it cuts to like that fucking train, it feels like you're in this fantasy setting, which to me is super appropriate, and it makes the style of the film just explode out, and you're just like, what an amazingly interesting scene. Like something that most people might not even notice, but you and I, we'd see it and we're like, that was filmed strangely, you know, like that was a weird choice, but I think it worked in the end.
I really appreciate when it's like, I love that just seems a little bit over my head, when I'm like, I don't think I would have done that, and I don't even know how I would be in the headspace to think about doing that. And it's like, that was, and then you watch like the film, like I said, like I haven't seen the movie in a while since we watched it a few months ago, but it's just like it's a great film. Like I really like it beginning to end. I can't really think of scenes like maybe a little bit towards the end, but it's like for the most part, all of the violent sequences and stuff I really enjoy, and they really work for me. And I think like you brought the word fantasy, and I think maybe like the right word is like nightmare, like, but nightmare in the literal sense. Not a nightmare that it's like something scary happening in your day to day. No, this is a nightmare like out of your dark recesses of your brain, your dreams. It's like, and that's why it feels like such a good adaptation of a Clive Barker property, because Clive Barker's whole fucking thing is it's like
dark fantasies and nightmare scenario.
I feel like he says this often. It's like most of his writing comes from nightmares that he has, and like from just like crazy imaginings he's had. And and like Midnight Meat Train, I think since, I gotta really think about this, but I think this is a true statement. Since the first Hellraiser film, I think it's the movie that's balanced violence, like serious subject matter, and then that nightmare that fantasy nightmare, those aspects just pretty perfectly. Like it's probably my favorite Clive Barker based film since the first Hellraiser, I think. Maybe I gotta think about that a little more, but I think so. I can't think of it. I love Hellraiser 2 as well, but like
I would say so. It's really interesting. I think that the people that they got to make it, even though like that one, like I said, the writer was his first script and everything. And I think that like, because from his work, he doesn't seem like he's the craziest, most talented person in the world. But I think it's just like a good crew to balance everything out. He gave them a good like, because it's a 20-page short story, right? I think he just gave them a good skeleton. And then it's all built up from just like talented people coming and making it what it is.
I did not know that.
With good performances, interesting ideologies, and just a good core story. But I agree with you. I think it's balanced really, really well. One of my favorite Clive Barker films, just because he goes so crazy with the fantasy element of it, is Hellbound Hellraiser 2, because it's like you're in hell, and it's just like that one is so much fun. But his stuff always deals with like that pseudo psychosexual stuff as well, and that's why his psychosexual thrillers always are like the most effective to me. There's something really creepy about watching a very nightmare story that has a heavy play in sexuality, a very vulnerable state that people are in. You're very personal. You open yourself up to this person and have this moment, you know, and it's supposed to be this like fun experience. And then when you combine it with like really like unnatural and creepy crap. I mean, like Frank from Hellraiser 1 is a good example of just that uncomfortable, like the mummy essentially. I need to regenerate. Go bring people, whore yourself out to bring them here so we can kill them, and then you can be with me, your lover. And it's like as that's happening and she's like falling in love with him, he has no skin. It's so fucked up. And what I'm kind of getting at with this movie is I absolutely love the scene when it's about halfway through the movie. Bradley Cooper has been following the butcher more and more, and he's uncovering this like conspiracy behind it. This guy looks like he's been alive for over 100 years, and you know, this, that, and the other. And he kind of plans out his like web of, you know, detectiveness. And the girl's like, I don't want this anymore. Like, please. His wife is like, I can't do this. This is too much. It's horrible. Like, I just want you to shoot during the day. Please do that for me. And he's like, okay, like, you know, he's like, okay. Because it was like, you see him and he's rambling like a madman. And that's like the moment where Bradley Cooper really gets to shine in his performance. Like, he's really kind of like, oh my God, like this, that, and the other. It's like, it's all things.
That's him. This is the guy, it's been happening. There's been abductions. It's happened before. I don't know if it's a copycat, but it's him, and I got him.
This is not what's going on, okay? This is all fake, okay? It's not. No more. No more night shoots. No more, please. Just day shoots. I don't want you to shoot terrible things. What makes you happy? What do you love?
You, I love you. I love you.
It's so great how it's edited, because it just cuts to her face every now and then, and she's like it's like staring at a psychopath. Like, he's just like, he's lost his mind. There's like this fear, and she's like, how can I bring you back to reality? And the ending of that scene is just outstanding, where it's like, okay, yes. And then I'll try to like focus more on the good things. So like, she's the metaphor for light in his life. She starts kind of like taking off her clothes and they're taking pictures, but he keeps having flashes of the train and the butcher shop and everything. And he's like a mess, and he looks ill and sick, and he just starts kind of being like, I can't do it. And she's like basically butt naked, just like holding, like covering herself. And she just breaks into tears and just, without saying anything, just turns and walks into the bedroom and closes the door on him. And the scene's over. It's so powerful. You don't expect it to be in a movie called The Midnight Meat Train. It's just like, it's such an excellent scene. And I was just like, and you feel so bad for her, because it's just like, I can't relate to it, but I can relate to that emotion of like something that you love is disappearing right before your eyes, and you can't do fucking anything to change it.
Oh yeah, you put yourself out there in like the biggest way. Yeah, like that didn't work either.
When you are not enough to bring him back, that's scary. Your whole life can change after that. Like, it's really well done.
It's interesting. That scene is almost like the draw me like one of your French girls scenes, evil. Like, double. Like, it's that same idea, but the one is the dark mirror of the other one. Like, the one is super light and romantic and beautiful, and then the one in Midnight Meat Train is like, this is if it goes very wrong.
Yeah, this is what you do not want your artistic boyfriend to fall into.
Yeah, you don't want his muse to be a
Yeah,
fucking psychopath or whatever.
Yeah, you don't want his life to be so focused on this dangerous man, especially when he's just like, he's a murderer. And it's just like, that's really up, and it's just like following him, stalking him, consistently having this weird obsession with him. And then to even go further and say also there's like this fantastical element that he could be over 100 years old but doesn't age. It's like red flags are just, it's like Evangelion when like an angel shows up and there's like all those red warning signs coming up. It's like basically that in your brain. And it's just like you can feel, and just because the performances are so well done and the way it's blocked, it's very simplistic. They're kind of walking around. It's like a stage play. It's walking around, you got shot, reverse shot, and then it cuts to a few wides and everything like that, and that's it. And it's just like, doesn't need crazy editing, it doesn't need all this stuff, it's balanced perfectly. And then you hard cut that with like the Rampage Jackson fight sequence in the train. That's insane. I should mention that Rampage Jackson is in this movie, of course, famously for being the replacement of Mr. T in the A-Team remake, which also had Bradley Cooper in it. So he played a tough to kill like street thug. I wanted to mention that scene because it's really weird. It's like the one scene where there's an intense amount of comedy in it.
Life is like a box of chocolates. This is a citizen's arrest! Oh, damn! I'm showing the hammer of your ass!
It's a fun little fight scene, but it's so funny because it's like, this feels like something that would be in like a Jean-Claude Van Damme action film. It's in the Midnight Meat Train. You're going from like, I'm going to stalk this guy, to extreme violence, to my life is falling apart, to my name's Rampage Jackson and you can't kill me. And then it kills him. But it's like, that's like the one where I'm like, they maybe should have just muted Rampage's like, I don't know, improvisation of like his jokes, because I was like, it's the only moment where you're like, it's funny and it is entertaining, but like as a narrative, you're like, this is like really not this really doesn't work. So I do like that fight scene though, because it is important for the Butcher's character, because the entire time the Butcher is kind of falling out of his job, as the conductor mentions, like his heart wasn't in it anymore. The conductor of the train, who is a part of the whole thing, his name is Tony Curran, and of course we all know him from being the Invisible Man in League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
That is who it is.
Yeah,
that's
isn't that
so funny.
insane?
Because I can, like, now that you say that, I can recognize his face, because in the Invisible in that movie, he's got painted face, he's bald,
yeah,
no
he's got
hair.
white and everything.
And in Midnight Meat Train, he's like a ginger, like beard and everything. But it's like his face shape is like unmistakable.
It's him. Because I was
he's a good actor, man.
I was like, oh, he's like he is so well, like he's so well cast in it, because he kind of comes off as like almost emotionless, but like snarky in a way, like, you're gonna do this and that's the way it's gonna go. And so there is emotion in there. It's just like beyond what we can even comprehend with that man. There's more going into his brain than we can really process. He's just this bundle of fucking evil. It's like evil incarnate is what he is. And I just thought it was really funny. And he doesn't have too many credits. I think I only wrote down just the fact that he was in that because it was so strange. I was like, what?
And his performance, I'll say this, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, say what you want about that movie, but like,
it's got some fun shit in it.
And it's got good performances in it. And his is one of them that's like quite good.
And are you a good boy?
I guess you'll find out, won't you?
So the Butcher kind of is like having difficulty completing the task of getting all these bodies set up for the goblins at the end. And it's just really interesting that like they take this moment to be like, hey, let's have two guys fight each other, two big guys fight each other, and then just like really show that like the Butcher isn't immortal. You know what I mean? He's not just somebody who's going to go and just kill you immediately. And I like it because it shows a slight amount of vulnerability to your antagonist. And I always enjoy that because it makes both your characters seem very human, so that at the end you can buy that Bradley Cooper would be able to actually get the upper hand on him. If he was just like unstoppable, you would be like, there's no way that Bradley Cooper would ever be able to beat this dude, especially if you add a fantastical element into it. So once again, it's just like a tight package where every scene, regardless of if the tone clashes with itself, it fits well. The structure of this is just like top notch. It's very interesting that for a horror movie, that is trying to balance like fantastical gratuitous violence and then a psychological thriller, that it does like, it's like a nice game of tennis. It plays back and forth quite well, and then every now and then it just kind of feels like it feels like it's night and day kind of with the tones, and then that's it. That's the only critique really. So I do enjoy that, and I think it's an important scene regardless. So
I'll say actually it's like maybe because you just mentioned critique, it's like because I do have one sort of large critique of the film, where it's like, I think because like you watch the movie and the movie's so excellent for like a lot of it, and I'll say this, like the only part of the film that feels a little weird is like not the very ending, but just before the ending, sort of when all the big reveal
when everything starts
gets happen,
to come,
when it's like, because what you find out in the film, bit of a spoiler here, go watch the movie anyways, but it's like it's quite jarring if you see the movie and you have no idea what you're in for. Because like me, it's like, I was like, it's a Midnight Meat Train, murder, Bradley Cooper, photographer, great. That's what you think it is. And you don't really question that much. You're like, yeah, that guy's slaughtering people, but he's like a fucking psychopath. He just does weird. And then at the end, you find out the reason that he's killing these fucking people is
big twist.
There is a legion of goblin people who live in the subways. Oh, it's New York City, of New York City, and they've been there for like thousands of years apparently, or whatever, since the dawn of whatever. They've been there before the city was there.
Ancient.
So, ancient. Yeah. And he brings them all these people, and he feeds the goblin people with these all these dead bodies.
Yeah.
And it's quite, when you first see the movie, you're like, what? And especially if you're not familiar with Clive Barker, you're like really like,
you're like,
this is really bizarre. Like what the? And I at the time I wasn't like that familiar with Clive Barker or his tropes and stuff. Now that if you know Clive Barker, you're like, oh yeah, this is. Now the Clive Barker part happened. Like now we're at the Clive Barker.
If you know Clive Barker, you're like, when are the goblins?
Yeah, it's like this is so part and parcel. That is really funny. But I'll say this, like, so the goblins get introduced or whatever, and then they really quickly get Bradley Cooper from being I'm fighting the Midnight Meat Train murderer to now I am the Midnight Meat Train guy. And it's like, they do it in like, I want to say it's like 10 minutes. Yeah. You go from the character fully goes to the and it's like this is what happens in the scene. It's like he's fighting the Midnight Meat Train guy, and his girlfriend is helping him fight him. Then all of a sudden, Midnight Meat Train guy's dead. Girlfriend gets killed. Bradley Cooper's tongue gets ripped out. The train guy conductor comes up to him, like, "Kate, it's your job now."
As he's eating his tongue.
Yeah, and it's like kind of whiplashy. Like it's very like a lot of stuff happens very back to back.
Oh, it's shocking.
I don't. The thing is, like, you got to get him there, and I don't. Obviously, there's a little bit of supernatural stuff going. The whole idea, it almost feels like it's supposed to be a little more of a metaphor with like somebody who has an addiction to like heroin or something like that. It's like eventually they're gonna hit the point of self-destruction where it's like they end up killing themselves or whatever. And in this movie, it's like he can't resist this addiction, this like obsession with this guy.
Yeah.
And then it leads him to the point of no return. He doesn't even realize it's the point of no return. He thinks he's just about to win. He's about to get the leg up on the guy. And then right when he thinks he's got the leg up, tongue gets ripped out, girlfriend gets killed. It's like, no, buddy, you should have taking your foot off the gas way earlier. It's way too late. You are now in for more than you bargained for. And so I'll say this, in that, when I look at it through that lens of more like a metaphor for that type of thing, it's fine because that's how it works with addiction. It's like you didn't OD until you fucking OD'd. Like you thought you were fine 3 minutes ago and then you're fucking dead.
You're dead.
So in that sense, it very much works with that whiplash. But I'll say this, when you're just watching the movie as like a straight narrative and you're not really thinking about it on that level, it feels very like, what the just happened? Like it is
narrative whiplash. You're just like Jesus Christ. You're like, who? What? It's like this Midnight Meat Train smashed in and just fucking changed everything. The one thing I'll mention, I read about the short story in here. So there's that one scene before where the butcher does like knock him out and hang him up, and then the goblins do show up and carve that shit in his chest.
Yes.
So you do have that, but this is where I agree with you with the problem. He still chooses to retaliate against the butcher when we should have had a Halloween end scenario. He should have went to Vinny and been like, teach me how to kill these guys. Like because in the book, what ends up happening is apparently when in the book it's a little different. He sees, I don't think it's he get hung up and gets like carving in his chest. It's just he sees those ancients, those goblin-esque people, and he becomes like almost hypnotic towards them. He can't get them out of his brain. It's all he thinks about, and then he becomes slave to them, almost like a brainwash. Yeah. And that leads him to continue to be so focused onto it. And maybe at the end he fights the butcher, but to me, I think what should have happened is he should have gone on the train that one last time and then actually been helping him kill all the people. And then his girlfriend sees that, and then that's when he kind of has the confliction of like, should I kill her, should I not? And then it actually should have been him who kills his girlfriend at the end. He removes the light from his life. And then at the very end, when he's leaving that room and everything, his apartment and everything, and you see that picture of him and her on the wall, he should have taken it and ripped it down. He leaves it there, and I'm just like, this is weird. You should remove all of that, because now we go to the beginning of the movie where we see that he does execute, he does kill all these people, he is doing the job, there's no red herring, he is the butcher now. And I was just like, but he's still holding on to that light in his life. I was like, I actually would have enjoyed if he was completely blank slated by the end, and then maybe in 100 years he would start maybe regaining some sort of personality, like what happened with Vinny's character.
It's interesting because like it might be because of the constraints of the film and the fact that the whole movie is set up as this like protagonist v antagonist thing. And so like maybe like writing the script or when they were conceptualizing it, they were like, we can't at the end have him we can't add another 15-20 minutes of Vinny teaching him and then like another like we're getting to the point in this script,
we got to wrap it up, we got to go.
And so I think that the reason because like what you just brought up, the metaphor I brought up with the heroin thing, that doesn't work at all with what you presented me with. And so maybe that's the thing. It's like it works for the one metaphor as like when you've crossed that line, it's out of your control. And I think like the it's interesting because like what you presented me with is like it's much more Hellraiser. Because like in Hellraiser, all the victims of Pinhead are like, I don't want to fucking be here. This is terrifying.
This is
stop cutting my. But then there's a point when they start becoming a Xenobite where you're like, oh, I understand now. Like I am fully into this now. Like this is sick. This is actually awesome.
This is the ultimate pleasure.
And it's like. And in that, what you just presented me with the Midnight Meat Train, it would have been a lot more like that when it's like he gets obsessed with these goblin. I'll say this too: the goblins look a little dumb. Like they look very Clive Barker, like Nightbreed.
Absolutely look like men in suits.
And it's like that's one part of the movie that maybe could have been a little, had they kept them a little more in shadows and like maybe done something that was a little more like The Descent, like those creatures, you know what I mean?
What I would have loved, this is what I was thinking with them, I would have loved if when they went in, like they parked the train and everything, if he was hanging there, if like maybe he was away from the rest of the bodies and he could see down in the car where they were getting eaten by, if all that he saw, he was getting eaten out. Like I said, sexuality,
very
baby. Clive Barker.
These aren't your average goblins.
He's not carving a symbol. He's eating that fucker out.
Cooch goblins.
Cooch goblins, the ancient sisters. But what I would have liked is like he kind of sees over at them eating it. It's completely black, but maybe only you could see their eyes or something like that. Or maybe as they're moving, maybe there's like some like flash of light that's very slightly revealing them. And then as the one walks up, you could have a great shot actually where you see Bradley Cooper hanging upside down, and then you have one where the camera kind of jibs up and then looks down on Bradley Cooper over the shoulder, and it's like shows this huge dominance. And then it's just like cut, and he's just like, maybe it's like he blacks out, and then he's like on the ground, and he's like, what happened? He's got the thing on his chest, and he's like, what does this mean? What's going on? And then he stumbles out of those, catacombs or wherever he was, and then he's in the butcher shop, and he's just like, this is so, what is going on? But then I would love if you kind of established him more that he just could not stop thinking about that moment. And then it was like really like pulling him into, like hypnotizing him. I would have liked that. Also,
I almost wish there was like an extended version of the film. had an alternate ending.
15 minutes more.
Because I like the version as it exists.
It's a really
like
tight, fun movie. It's just like the ending is very like boom, 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 boom.
I almost wish there was. I wish 2 versions could exist. Kind of like the I Am Legend. It's like I wish that these 2 different versions existed, where there's one that was extended and had a bit of a different ending. Yeah. Where it's like, because I agree with you. It's like him killing his own girlfriend would have been a very satisfying end to his arc. Like that would have been a very very clearly routed arc. Like you'd see that from beginning to end. Then it has a beginning, middle, and end, rather than right as it stands. The movie, it's kind of like beginning, middle, then at the end it's all taken away from him. Like it's
everything's
and
gone.
that's why you feel like when you watch the ending, you're like, you feel like you lost so much.
I would have enjoyed that too with then the conductor going up to him and you think he's gonna like reward him, but he rips out his tongue and it's like, no, you are 100% a slave. You have no word in this.
That would have been great. That would have been he kills his girlfriend. He thinks it's a big deal.
And it's like, nope.
His reward with that.
Your reward is this.
Because it's very in that sense, the tongue thing is kind of more symbolic, whereas in the movie it's very utilitarian. It's like, this is gonna stop you from speaking about this. Like even if you wanted to, will physically. And it's like, it's immediately in the film because they present it that way. Yeah. You immediately are like, well, you could just
write something down.
And it's like you don't think about it too much, but the fact that they present it to you in the film that way as it's a method of stopping you from speaking out. Yeah. It's like,
and I mean, like they also like this syndicate of goblinitis or whatever is it goes all the way into the police because there's the black cop lady, which immediately, it's really funny. It's like the scene when he's just like, I have pictures of these guys and then the Asian girl's dead and everything like that from like the, I don't know, turning point 1 starts like 30 minutes in the film. And he's like, here's all the photos. This is what happened. There's video footage here. It's at this station. Go check it out. And she's like, yeah. So you killed him? And I'm just like, clearly you're just like, all right, this is all like, definitely she's into it. And then even at the end, she's wearing a necklace that has the same symbol as his ring, which is the goblin symbol. So one scene I really like in this movie as well, speaking of that, is when his girlfriend, Leslie, the actress name, when she goes with the friend to the butcher's apartment. I think that's a great scene because it's filmed, once again, it's very stylistic and it reminds me of James Wan, which is funny because Saw. But like James Wan, I mean, if you look at like Malignant, he's got all the shots of the house and it's like clearly a set because we're going over the ceilings and stuff. Yeah. And that's what they do in that. So it's like, it's a set that they built and the camera is like going up and it's going through and you're seeing all the rooms and they go in there to try and find his camera because the camera has proof that this man is a killer. This is like right after Bradley Cooper gets like goblined up by the goblins. So they're like, okay, let's go and help him because it's either let him fall into despair or let's intervene and like actually try to help him out. And I just think that whole scene is really well done. You get this like interesting shot as well where you see like the butcher like cutting off these like legions or something like that from his chest, and I don't really know. I think that's like left up to interpretation, or maybe it's explained more in the short story. But the only way I can think of it is that through the unnatural like limitless of his age, it's like maybe just like affecting him in some way. You just I
think I did read what that was about, and I think there is like an in-universe explanation for what's up with that.
Yeah.
Can't remember what it is though, but it's fucking gross.
It is
he
gross.
Collects them.
Yeah, and then like he puts them in these jars, and then like she grabs it, drops it and everything.
Right. You're already a fucking murderer. You don't gotta go do weird shit like that.
I think that's a great scene, and then it leads. Of course, it leads to the friend getting just like, I love that scene. He's like in the closet, finds the camera, and then like the butcher's just like right behind him, and he's like, and it just gets smashed right across the face. I love that. And like, God, and that the ending fight scene when the friend meets his untimely demise and like they slice his stomach, it is like gallons of blood coming out, and it's like you'd think that he didn't die from the bleeding, he died from being like suffocated from like how much blood is on his face. So I forgot that actor's name, but he also made an appearance in like Hostel Part 2 and everything like that.
Why am I glad to meet you? I'm Hercules.
He's not a bad actor, actually. He just doesn't appear too much in things anymore. But yeah, I there's just like really good, like when it comes to like thrilling, tense moments, like it's really interesting how they deliver them really well. It's like maybe you're not super scared, but you are kind of like on the edge of your seat in a way. Like it is a thrill ride, you know, so it is fun. That's why like I think it's like the Midnight Meat Train is such a fun name for this movie. It's like it just has this energy to it that you're just like, man, I can't believe how on board I am on this movie when really there's only about like 4 murder sequences in the whole thing.
I mean, they're
but I was gonna say, I was like, but they make up for it by every time they show it. It's just in your face. Like Ted Raimi, Sam Raimi's brother, wonderful Ted Raimi. He has a cameo in this movie, and that's the moment that when you see his death, you will think that the movie was filmed for 3D. But I assure you, it was not. It's just like they're talking. It's like, I don't feel comfortable on the train. I want to go, and it's like Ted and this girl and another guy, and it's like, oh, everything's fine. He's like, well, we'll get off on the next stop, and Vinny just walks right up behind him and just clobs him right in the head with his amazing gigantic hammer. And it's just like his eyes, and I love this detail, they come out of their sockets but the optic nerves still stick on. And it's so great. And then it's like, I kind of love that, because then it's like when you see the preparations that he has to do for them, it looks like a pain in the ass. He's like, I got to rip all their teeth out one by one. I got to remove all their fingernails, cut their hair with the old timey shaver. It's like an
dress
old,
them, clean them like deer.
It's literally preparing for the slaughter, like the slaughter after, and like shipping it off. It's really interesting. Like it's just like I like that they had that moment. And I will say, when I was watching it the other day, it's those little details that kind of, those were the moments that made me go like, oh god damn, it's so gross. Just seeing him kind of like twist and click the tooth out, it's like I could feel it, you know. And then like the nails, there's something about those small little details that those are the ones that kind of get under your skin. And when the sound design is like on point with it, you're like, yes, that's good, that's good.
Yeah, I'll say that. It's like, and this is pretty, actually Hellraiser 1 did this well, and it's something I've kind of been lacking in most Clive Barker projects, because like he's a horror writer. That's how he's presented, and that's how like he's marketed himself. And it's just like in most Clive Barker adaptations, there's just not, I'll say this, the video games do a much better job of this.
That Jericho game, just to like interfere 1 second here, is a very interesting game that is only faulted by poor game mechanics.
Oh yeah.
It's like the only thing. If that was a movie, that would be a fascinating movie. I'll let you continue.
First Hellraiser to me has like genuinely scary scenes.
Oh yeah.
And it's especially with, like you said, the uncle character,
Uncle Frank,
like when he's first getting,
when he has escaped from hell and he's regenerating himself,
legitimately scary. And it's still scary today. Like the imagery is still like, it'll keep you up at night.
I will absolutely agree with you on that. The shot of his half torso leaning up and it's all gooey and everything, and he screams. That is like, you see that as a kid, like even just thinking about it, because I remember I saw that when I was quite young, and I remember being like, holy shit. Like,
and I think I didn't see that movie. I was much older when I saw that movie, like for sure post 16 years old.
Oh really?
And that scene scared the fuck out. I was like, and I remember being like, this is awesome. Like the fact that this film came out when it came out and it's still fucking scaring me is so awesome, because like very rarely do films from that era still scare like they did. And then the way that they shoot Frank, from that, they stopped doing it at a certain point in the movie, but a lot of times, like when he like hides in the shadows. Oh yeah. And he doesn't. You never, like at first you don't get a good look at him, and it's like you start imagining how fucked up he is, and like he's got like a raspy voice and stuff, and he says really, and they do like a little bit of some effects work on his voice.
I said, don't look.
And it's really effective. And Hellraiser, I think, did a really good job of like actually interjecting like real horror, like scaring you. And then I think Midnight Meat Train, although I don't think it's quite on that level, it has done the best job, I think, since then. Because like at first, when Vinny Jones, when you first see him and Bradley Cooper starts following him, it's like tense. You're like, oh, he's gonna turn around. Oh, like they keep you. it has that level of horror, like where you're like, oh, I hope he doesn't see Bradley Cooper. I hope he doesn't catch him. I hope, like, so you're on edge, you're tense or whatever. And I'll say with a lot of Clive Barker's projects, I really like them because the lore is in depth and the writing is good, and I like the imagery and stuff.
Yeah.
But so many of them just don't scare me, and I don't think it's Clive Barker's fault. No. I think it's
the adaptation. Yeah, it's the people in charge of the adaptation.
Yeah, they just, and it's not a lot. They just need to interject like 1 or 2 scenes to get there.
I think they water, like, and I've noticed this, they always water his down. You gotta go for it. Can you imagine if he didn't direct Hellraiser? That would have been a totally different movie, you know? And
that whole scene. Yeah, no,
Frank
probably wouldn't have been in there.
No, yeah, it would have been different because it would have been like, we don't want to be like The Thing. Let's try to be a little more psychological. Like the idea of balancing like that fantastical horror with the family drama aspect of it. That's hard. Yeah. But like, and there's only very few movies that do it well, with the biggest one being The Exorcist and Hereditary. Those perfectly do it. Where it's like the real horror.
Shining even to an extent.
Oh yeah, The Shining when you really kind of dive deep into it.
Yeah, the best horror movies are the ones that
they deal with a personal matter and then give you the supernatural elements in it, and that's when it delivers home. Like when the characters are very realistic, it makes the fantastical elements still feel grounded in reality.
And then have some like genuinely frightening imagery to like actually scare you.
Something, and all the way down to the point where you could have something that can seem corny or cheesy still be scary. There's a way to do it. Like it is a corny end, but the end of Invasion of the Body Snatchers with Donald Sutherland, where he screams, it's bone chilling. Yeah, it's bone chilling. But when you describe it to somebody, it's like she sees him and it thinks like everything's good, and then he goes and he points and he stretches his face out and goes, "Rah!" And it's just like, that sounds so stupid. And then you watch the whole movie, get to that ending, and you're like, oh, and you got chills.
Yeah, you're like, that's the worst. That's the worst. You're like, that's the worst. That's the worst.
You want to talk about a scene that represents hopelessness? That and then it just ends. Yeah. And you're like, wow, that's some like, balls. Oh. That is like the best stuff you can get with horror films. And with Midnight Meat Train and Clive Barker, it's like that's always what his stuff does. It always, there's something in there you'll never forget. And with Midnight Meat Train, to me, it's like the scene that really kind of like, to me, is like a true horrific moment, is that scene when Bradley Cooper cannot stop obsessing over this guy, and then even his girlfriend, she doesn't know what to do. Like that's, to me, true horror, because it's like, I can feel that sadness, that despair, but then all the stuff with him on the train is wonderful fun. That's stuff that for like a teenager, it's just like, what an entertaining movie. And I think when I saw it, when I was like, I think I might have been 14 or 15 when I saw the movie, I was just like, what a bundle of fun. Like, I think I actually shut it off, like it was over, and then I watched it again. Like I had that much fun watching it. So really great movie.
Yeah, it's like, so, as much as like I said, I had that kind of critique where it feels like it's pretty whiplashy towards the ending. It's like, at least
it's
this is a horror movie for adults. Yeah, where it has a downer ending and a lot of fucking downer shit happens back to back, so that you leave the movie being like, oh god, it's it's worse than I imagined.
When you see him with his haircut and everything like that, and he kind of turns and then it just like cuts, you really are just like, god, what a miserable kind of experience. And then it's funny because then you'll have people that critique and be like, did it need such a downer ending? It's like, a horror movie, of course it needed a downer ending.
I'll never understand that. I'll never understand the...
It's like, what the hell did they expect?
It's like the one critique I'll always say. I always say this to you whenever a new horror movie comes out. I'm like, if I go to a fucking movie that markets itself as scary and it doesn't scare me, why did you even make a fucking horror movie? Like, what was the purpose? Like, I don't understand. And it's like, and there's lots of different types of horror. I'll say that outright. It's like, The Shining doesn't jump scare you. I mean, it kind of does at points, but not really. Like, The Shining is like, gets in your fucking bones. Yeah. Like, that's horror. The Exorcist has a lot of jump scares. A lot of like, that is, like, horror can be a lot of different ways, but it's got to make you feel uncomfortable in some way. Like, I want to leave. It's like, I don't want to see this anymore. Like, you have to have that. If you don't have that thought once in a horror movie, what are you doing with your fucking horror?
If you're writing a horror movie and at one point you don't walk away from the computer, go to the bathroom and take a good hard look at yourself in the mirror and say like, am I fucked up, you're not writing a horror movie.
It's like
you
that's
need
the thing.
there's got to be a lot of self-reflection of like what to me would just be like nightmare scenarios. And like and to me, horror has the wonderful, like in screenwriting, there's the, like I was saying with this movie, does the game of like tennis, back and forth, back and forth. But then at one point when you're writing, you go from something good happens, something bad happens, to something worse happens. And that to me is like a wonderful playing field to go from, okay, something good happened. We found a solution to maybe, let's say, stop this curse. Something bad happened. The person ended up dying and we weren't able to get all the information. Something worse happens. A huge fucking, like, you know, the Samora comes out and kills your kid. And you're like, oh my God, now what do I do? And having a scene where you go and talk to the person and have this wonderful, like, creepy, dramatic kind of moment with them, and it feels very like hopeless, to then having the thing you're trying to protect just die. Holy, like, you want to talk about just like that feeling of like despair and sadness and fear. It's like, that is an excellent, like you can play with that in horror, and it's amazing how no horror movie does that now. Like, they don't go down those avenues. The only people that do it, I find, are like foreign filmmakers or something like that. I don't know.
That maybe is the best selling, like the fact that we're bringing up all these other brilliant horror movies and like all the stuff that scares us, and we're like,
it has a place in it.
It got us, well, it's like it got us talking about horror and why we love horror and like the things that we love about horror. And it's like that the Midnight Meat Train spurred us into that conversation. Like, it's so effective in what it does, and it's such a good, I'm not gonna say it's like the 10 maybe is with a 10 out of 10s. No. But man, honestly, I would put it in the 8 out of 10s, 9 out of 10s. Like, it's such a good movie. It's well performed. It's a great story. It's like it is chilling. It's got a great concept. It's just kind of done well. It's a very good package that maybe like has these little parts that like take away that 1 point or those 2 points to put it in that 8 out of 10. But it is better than 90% of the stuff that you'll see that is just like kind of shit out these days in theaters or whatever. Like, most of the fucking horror movies that you see in theaters these days,
it is notches above those.
So I'll say that it's like it's not The Shining, but it's not fucking like,
it's not Boogeyman.
Insert shit horror movie that got a bunch of marketing. A marketing push. Like, it's not that.
No.
It's like it is closer to The Shining than it is to. And I'm just saying The Shining because that's like, to me, it's like one of the most brilliant horror movies. But it's like, on the spectrum, it is good horror, not bad horror.
It falls into that wonderful one of my favorite categories of horror, which is entertaining horror. But then it actually steps a bit above it, and it has, like I said, that other half of the movie where you're with Bradley Cooper and that psychological aspects of it. I was like, that brings it into real life horror. It's very effective.
It actually, because I think you brought this up before, and I think it's true. It's like, it actually is, aspects of it are very reminiscent of like a James Wan type film, where it's like James Wan's horror movies, also famously extremely entertaining movies, just baseline. But he elevates them. Like, he does. It's not just because you give that to a different director and it would be that shitty horror movie
so generic
that is like marketed that way.
But
James Wan takes this entertaining idea and he elevates it so that it's like, this is still frightening. I'll say Malignant is like the one where it's like, but that movie's so self-aware.
He was doing
it's an outlier.
He was doing something totally different
that movie
there.
is its own thing. But it's like you elevate it, and Midnight Meat Train is that. It's like, it's this horror idea. It's got a pretty good idea. Clive Barker, strong bones. Could have been given to a director that it's like, this was very generic, but it was elevated. Like, it's definitely an elevated horror movie.
I completely agree. That's why, like, to me, it's just like shine a spotlight on something that gets not as much attention to, and it's just like, it's such an interesting one because it's like, it's almost like it's standing there in like right underneath the light. And it's like the moment you mention it, it turns the light on. Everybody is like, yes, that movie is very good. Yes, that is a well-made movie. Or yes, it's got creepy elements to it.
Or you'll like, because I feel like it's still to this day, maybe a little less with the internet and stuff, but it's like, I feel like you still run into people who are like, oh, I've never seen it. And it's like, oh, you need to see it.
You
like,
can.
You should watch
it's a wonderful film to always throw into a forum and to try and recommend to people, because you get the best of both worlds. Somebody who hasn't seen it yet, and then somebody right next to them say, "You got to see that."
Yeah,
it's like, really well done.
Yeah.
So Clive Barker's crazy little story, right here ended up turning into a very well done, stylistic, entertaining movie that has actual frightening, real events that happen in it, like reality that you can connect to. It's not just how many times can someone get blunged by a hammer. You know, as fun as that is, it's kind of like taking elements of Silence of the Lambs and the best of Friday the 13th, and throwing them together. It's very, and it sounds jarring when you say that, but it somehow works really well.
It's almost like more like Hannibal and
Red
Dragon
Hannibal,
kind of,
like,
where it's
kinda
like
deals.
they lost a little bit of prestige.
And
they like the scene when the guy's eating his own brain or whatever.
That's the best part.
Kind of like, you know, but it's kind of like that, where it's like, this is still horrific, but it's got a little more
goofy,
humor,
a little more fantastical. But you know, that's the brilliance of Clive Barker. So and that's it. Go watch The Midnight Meat Train on the subway and on your iPhone in the intended way it was supposed to be. It was just circling through.
The way they filmed it,
Well, I guess that's it for Midnight Meat Train. And now, since I have you, we're gonna dive into here and showcase some of David Lynch's amazing artwork.
Oh, excellent! Yeah.
So this is David Lynch's beautiful book.
Yeah.
And I think what we'll do is
don't worry, we're only 1/8 through this video.
I think what we'll do is we'll just look at some of these pictures, and I'll pick one that we'll talk about for our next movie here. And here, let's do this one right here. It is The Hellbound Heart.
There you go. Now we're talking.
Clive Barker, Volume 2, bitch. Okay.
Okay, let's take a little break here.
My ass hurts.